Jagi Chanyan Gipe Tokang Jolam Panja Sangay Trooper So
Sanje
Chodang Togi Chonam Chandu Bada Dagi Gaptuchi Jagi Chanyan Gipe Tokang Jolam Panja Sangay Trooper So Chodang Togi Chonam Chandu Bada Dagi Gaptuchi Jagi Chanyan Gipe Tokang Jolam Panja Sangay Trooper So
Tayata, Gade,
para some gate
Tayata, Oman, Gade,
para some gate
Tayata,
para some gate
Wala so simja tamjega to tomjalana machiba sanje komara moja chineja tobacha di che da ene ba janjo semba labjana tuishi da na lawale singole simole tugo tuji manowa ji godo manowa ji da kapsu bawa da kasoda akanja re ta ji da junju shu de ningi samsacha watancha.
So we begin by setting our motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the pure state of enlightenment. And to do this, we know we have to perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. Those trainings in turn must be understood. We must have a very good idea of what to do. And that we gain this by being able to rely upon a non-mistaken presentation, a non-mistaken source. And so it is with this in mind that we are here to listen to a teaching from the great mind training text known as the Bodhisattva's Way of Life this morning.
Wala so odre cha ore ta namje ne shi chen rang ge duen de la ne tab jala tuje chimbo de ba ne ka so ra lama tu be ong bu se ta ngora ge tse za lama na ba to ba sha je tu ba na ba tu be ong bu se ta ane rang ge ta wa de en chen che ma jing ge sim je ta ne ma sa on de ba yu sam so ko ba che.
And likewise, we follow that by beginning, as we normally do, by visualizing the figure of the greatly compassionate one, the one who is skilled in needs, the image of Shakyamuni Buddha, who is in essence our own root guru. And then we also visualize all around us, all kind mother sentient beings.
Lama tuya ombe rangi lama tuya ombe seta bati ane jiwo on chamba tuga on sigi sumje seta tuga honla ane wese padu baba chule shingranda ishiba honla de chaba chenta ishiba lama tuya ombe namba chenta te honla ochu lama chena midio ujende gichi tang je la dusu sanje tamje ga an dani to ishiba ngosu hona shuni yosu wadina kumbacha.
And so the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha we see is marked by 3 syllables: the Om at the crown, the A at the throat section, and the Hung syllable at the heart. And from the Hung syllable at the heart, light rays emanate, going out into the pure realms and inviting all the wisdom beings and empowering deities. And they return, the wisdom beings dissolve into the central figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment through the crown, which overflows at the crown, producing the figure of Akshobhya. And so we see this character as the complete embodiment of all the Buddhas of the 3 times.
Duna said that Lama to be on Boti and it took us there. Kuson to be in there, Ranchi Batam, the Shanji, what the Tale, Kula to the Shabani, Suba, Penta Mada Tamja to and say again. And Marazu to the two, Marazu to the Lamla, Marazu to the Mobas of Sandua. If what the little Kumbashian, Imba, more Tobachin, Kumbashian. What that to be in this something. Ranga Taka, you take Market Simja, that Tanjang, and the Kasola Takacha, they wanted therefore, you to make taught the permanent. What that to get combustion or combustion, and did that to make Buddha Java Chimora, Java Chuja, Java Short, Java Kagi chickens, did that general Lama to be on with Chingy Lamso. They were that they were good at the 제때나 집어라 대바 규제 대바 쇼트 대바 달에 대다 전에 아마 투병 뭐 전에 슈 전에 라마 투병 뭐 챙길라 어디를 공부하시나 당문에 걸어 소소 제가 저도 학생께는 제가 저도 선제 탐제 선제 지게 난 대화 탐제 동가 탐제 저 제마도 세고 있어 아니다 대대 제트베 니바 수도 도서 어다 되나 세트 라마 투병 뭐 공부하니 봐이나 뒤제 캄다 삼바 파라니와 지다 와시도 경계 요가 있어 아니 지제 침적이 되더라 규모 뭐 멤버 좋아 집에 타올 만들어 지야면 말이야. 줄로 만들어 지야면 말이야. 근데 이 맞아 달라면 두명 고마마도 탑거라면도 좀 지기 섬서 공부하시. 난 뒤에서도 다 주주고 슝데. 아니 딱 가서 뭐다 지금 가서 퇴선 잡고 좀 생활 들어 공부하시. 저는 세체.
And so that we, in reflecting on the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha that we have visualized in front, we contemplate on the wonderful qualities of enlightenment. The fact that an enlightened being has no fear of any suffering with regards to themselves, is skilled and means in removing the fear of suffering of others, who works for all sentient beings without any bias whatsoever and with great compassion, and benefits all without any thought of getting any benefit in return. The figure of an enlightened being also has created the causes to attain that state through really generating the mind of enlightenment, focusing on all sentient beings, training on the path with that same focus, that same motivation, and indeed stepping into the full and complete enlightenment purely for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so we need to kind of recognize these qualities of enlightenment, have that full appreciation of all these qualities. And in focusing on all sentient beings all around us, we see that on the one hand, sentient beings want happiness, that they are completely bereft of such happiness. They really want to avoid and to dismiss suffering with which they are inundated. And so that we think how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings had happiness and causes of happiness. May this be the case. I will be the one who will do this. So Guru deity, please bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful if all sentient beings were free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May this be the case. I will be the one to do this. Oh, Guru Buddha, please bless me to be able to do this. And we want to generate that extraordinary intention that is totally dedicated to this task. But of course, we realize that forget about doing this for all sentient beings. We can't really properly do this for one sentient being. But when we focus on the figure of enlightenment, we see that it's only from that perspective that one has the knowledge of the individual dispositions, the karmas, the timing, and so on, everything that is necessary to work perfectly for sentient beings. And so Buddhas kind of are ripen the minds of those, further ripen the minds of those who are already ripening, and they ripen the minds of those who are yet to be ripened. And so all of this leads to the inevitable conclusion that there is no alternative for me but to attain that state of enlightenment. I must attain that state of enlightenment. And it is with this motivation of enlightenment, this mind of enlightenment, this bodhicitta, that we attend this teaching today to listen to an actual the blueprint of how to go about the Bodhisattva's way of life, how to study it, how to reflect on it, how to meditate on it.
what dita 지장은 당 알아서 직관과 추조와 인바인사 아니 저기 담 그래서 저기 대바 담세다 되게 온게 또 켜봐 용기래 되네 인바인사 다지단 키랑 아마체도래 다가는 이제 심제 내버 수이네 말아도 저것도 대다가 쳐도 가서 매래 청아 가서도 청과 직장나 장소 어떻게
So again, I was just pausing here for a moment, just in the sense that we're all Dharma friends here. we have so many difference in experience in the Dharma faith and in terms of our tantric commitments and so on. But I'd just like to pause here to ask us to recite some medicine Buddha mantras that actually, I was telling again earlier, my mother was quite sick in hospital at the moment, but indeed, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, that we can simply recite some medicine Buddha mantras at this point.
심지어 수인반에 다 딩거나 삼로다나 강한 내가 차대도와 내가 차대도와 와다 된데서 되게 아들 가서다 지 가서 다 지금 가서도 지금 내 나자다 아니 뒤에서 용모도서 바차도 제가 좋아했다 아니 다들 지금 좋은 너가 아마래 안테 토타베다 맞아 심지어 탐지게 쳐도 아니 지금 가서도 다 지금 레뉴 바차다 치시바 아니 나가도 내가 내 나자 강에 가는 뒤 뉴도 시에 And
so in this context, praying for somebody, but we know that whoever it is, that the illness or disease or discomfort that we are speaking of comes from mental affliction, comes from the negative karmas that we've accumulated based on a motivation of a mental affliction. And that, this is whether, we have attachment, aversion, and ignorance, and so on, that it doesn't matter what suffering, all of this is going to lead to the suffering of change, and of course we have pervasive suffering. In other words, as long as we are in cyclic existence, and we know we're in cyclic existence through the power of karma and mental affliction. And so this is our biggest disease anyway, this is our biggest illness. So we want to dedicate this primarily for Noel's mother, but also for all sentient beings, because we are all in this together. Like we have this disease of cyclic existence, and so we dedicate these mantras to the eradication of mental affliction and imprints, and we dedicate for all sentient beings that all their temporary and ultimate illness may be pacified as quickly as possible. And so we're all aware as well of the coronavirus is still rampant around the world. And for all those who have suffered and are suffering from that as well, that we dedicate these mantras. And so since we are already visualizing the figure of the Munindra Buddha in the space in front of us, and we simply perform the kind of switch of the Buddha transforming into the image of the medicine Buddha himself.
And then you was what the good don't have to come share what did I say? And then who said to say Green Bomney. And it's a the gospel Nolga Amare. And Takanisha Simja Suina, that man that had a saga and Tilla Ma teacher Nubama to say Green Bomney, and it's a mega side effect to the Shiva check. And it's a mega pentocare Nubachin the check. Until Nubachin the nigger with near the summer, nigger goods our dancing, there's a pacha the Nubachin Chasu. And I say, Toya Karina, the Tangel, and take it to say Green Bomney. So what in the conversation? You know, what in the conversation? Oh yeah.
So the medicine Buddha meditation is set up like this, that we visualize the medicine Buddha figure, who is blue in color, 2 hands. They are both in the meditative equipoise posture, holding a large alms bowl filled with medicinal nectar, and that we kind of dedicating this, all this with Noel's mother primarily in our thoughts, but also all sentient beings all around included in that. The mantra includes the words Bekenze, which actually we can see as meaning medicine itself. And so when we say that Bekenze, that includes the medicine for disease, the medicine of the mental afflictions. When we say Maha Bekenze, this is great medicine, and that is primarily focused on eradicating mental afflictions from the root, together with their imprints. And so this, as we recite the mantra, then from the medicinal alms bowl in the medicine Buddha's lap, the nectar of medicinal nectar begins to flow, and we can see this entering into the crowns of all the sentient beings that we are visualizing, but also it kind of really empowers all of the regular medicine that they have to take, whether they're in hospital or at home, all the food and drink that they are partaking of, that it instills that with this special quality, not only to cure the physical discomfort and disease, but also what's going on in the mind, the mental afflictions and so on. And so that this is a very all-encompassing medicinal nectar that deals with every aspect of the life, transforming it.
So Sunday Melech will make it Hala Chaza Lo, what it shall. On Bejaza now. Taito Beja
Taito
Beja Randa Sama Taito Beja Taito Beja Taito Beja Randa Sama Taito Beja Randa Sama Taito Beja Taito Beja Ma Beja Randa Sama Taito Beja Taito Beja Randa Sama Taito Beja Taito Beja Taito Beja Randa Sama Taito Beja
So now the medicine Buddha that we have visualized can now just simply transform back into the figure of Guru Munindra Shakyamuni Buddha. Shukran the Gyatang Juku the Wogi Chikti Sumba Chawa Chewala say Gulongi Sambala Dakbala Sum. So we continue with the text, and we've been exploring chapter 5 on the chapter on awareness, and we arrive at this outline, which is described as the analysis of our motivation at the time when we're engaging in any kind of activity. And so obviously pinpointing something that is extremely crucial, that to avoid a lack of attention or just ignoring what's going on in the mind when prior to engaging in any activity. So it's pinpointing motivation as extremely important, and it is dealt with in 3 different sections. Briefly, then a more extensive explanation, and then a summary.
meaningful meaningful kulongkalo kende kon jotu bekalo ane mo kende chikomi watige na shinchena wata panja tipi tabo joba yina ane gewa duba yina gewa de pi tabo ane chasangwa yago shongurwa watende ane mi gewala kugab da kugab nyuaraye ane namsina kugab maraye tere yongurwa ta nyomo chola watende keba yongu yore ane jawa kare duba na ane jawa dide chena di yongure dide chena di yongus chik kala kazam chik suetigeche 냠용도 는 최티게지. 그러와. 근데 교인지 중앙 인바는 교 갑도도 내가도 수요나 하고 그러와. 다 교 맞은 거네 근데 저번에 뒤용 거래 근데 진짜 저 하거나 안들이 켜봤으기로 와. 켜봤을 교 맞은 거네. 아니 안 되잖아. 근데 교용 거래. 그러나 지금 연대는 다 개변이지만 뒤 맞은 거는 뒤 제와는 아니 근데 개변 용 거, 근데 야구 용 거랬으네. 얘를 시도해 되나? 안들이 켜봤으기로 와. 다 지금이나 연대 가는 카드도 여대가 수요나 한국으로 와. 이렇게 해봤겠어요 말와. 왔다 된대. 다 등에는 소소 삼로 조당의 지당 같은 아니 전에 뒤용으로 초바티 도했지. 초바티죠. 다 뒤인데 규단 대비 남자가 도난하고 신고도. 또 대화 되고 있나 대외 주가래. 아니 그렇게는 아니 뒤주를 가르가르 체크고 있미티. 뒤를 해봐도 그거도 와. 어디를 다들 임기다 다뭐 돌 때문에 자월이야 간세 끼어봐 되죠 담 마어도 봐 주나 양사 당보란제 셈다나 템베리과 템버차스
And so this again just points to the fact that in kind of like prior to engaging in any kind of action, it is extremely crucial that we get into the habit of setting our motivation, and that to ensure that the action that we are about to engage in is something meaningful, is something positive and virtuous. It's part of that three actions of motivation, the actual engaging in the action, and then the dedication, all of which we need to perform to ensure that whatever we are doing is done to its maximum, that we get the best out of it. And in terms of a virtue, of course, that is the best kind of virtue, and that we have started it well, we have performed it well, and we have dedicated it well. And then this also, of course, is very much giving no opportunity for non-virtuous elements to kind of pollute our actions, and so it becomes very important then to kind of gain a certain sort of habit of previewing our actions, so that if I do this, then this will eventuate, and to get clear kind of idea about what could possible be consequences and outcomes of actions that we are about to take or thinking of engaging in. And this is all about experience, isn't it? Gaining that sort of life experience. It's all very well to kind of like, to bundle along and to kind of like have faulty actions and mistakes in our thing, and that everybody can kind of point out, but it's really the mark of somebody who has some expertise, a master who takes the time to really kind of do the preview of their actions, to kind of look into what is the right course of action to take in order to minimize fault and to maximize benefit. And so this becomes very important, and of course implicit in all of this is to become a master of cause and effect, to really understand what the causes of happiness are, and that to then plan our life and plan our actions accordingly.
가리기 동에 주토고도 가리기 동에 연구도 가리기 대화 연구도 아니 동네디 용알라 당부 가리전에 동네 연구도 아니 안디 쇼알 튕겐 가리전에 동네 연구도 아따 되게 그가 나서나 하고 와이나 아니 동네 주마도를 팽들와 안 대화네 대화지 고고 요래 고고 요거는 안 주간데지 samlo tone kadesh kogudu. Ane lunga gu choba tone kadesh kogudu. Ane dile chewa ina, ane dile tene ane chikasura pendo de kari yungu yumiti. Hakobe. Yana samlo tangtang matikwa chiga dile tene lunga gu choba matikwa chiga na dile tene ane chikasura chiga rangla midebe dunga kari yungu ngasana hako tuyechi. Go tuyechi. Ote. Ane dile tene 자월 legni mano acho yong tuguwa mano yong tuguwa ta kanje je ote ta de ngasane jiga samlu nesete letuane ani nonju nyongwa yaga yongura ne kanza de nonju zawani ne mayo de yongura ta 당고 건배 온게 timbe yongu ta de shukchodo chudo tone ote de 맞잖아 딱 갑도 de 강하게 차원데 디코 캬바 인고가 말 강에 말도 되고 매다 강에도 모든 거 센터보다 얘네 강에도 유도 거 센터보다 다 강에 지체거든 와 어디서 거기 가서는 뒤잖아 뒤용거래 뒤잖아 뒤용거래서 지지 가서도 저다 차사지 심바터는 다 가지 랜드에 남자들 약고지 심바이나 약고지 신안 등문에는 랑게 하고 봐서 많이 봐처럼 가서도 삼중의 고하신이 바이나 들 예바신이보다 랑도의 예바시 당도는 최종의 고하서 많이 봐처럼 생길 라베 제도 장 많이 봐처럼 대장의 마차마 생길 라람이 심바티 대장의 차마 샤바처럼 아니 디 이미데 아니 랑게 삼로 양내 양도 잘 땅네 아니 릭트베 줄레 릭트베 두바 용다 삼로 양내 양도 땅 왔을 다 디면도 저서민도 삼자 랑도 예바 장도 같이 와다디 개치부 차고요 디제도 아니 경계 차도 용도 자 연대 자만도 마다 쪽으로
So that's this is at the heart of it, really, isn't it? So to be able to reflect on this, to kind of like really see that what course of action leads to suffering, what course of action leads to happiness, in not just the short term, but the long term. And what is the most beneficial approach to take in any given action? What is it I should do to ensure a happy result? And that to reflect on then what actions of body and speech should follow with this kind of motivation to ensure that that what is going to be the most beneficial outcome from this particular motivation. And this is very, very important that we are able to kind of become like a true specialists, masters at ensuring that whatever motivation we begin with doesn't lead to incorrect actions of body, speech, and mind further down the road. That we become aware, that we know, and that we know what is the way to proceed in unmistaken fashion. That where there are fewer mistakes, we can't obviously hope for a totally clean, spotless record because we are beginners. We are only at the outset in this. We are in cyclic existence, and so that we need to be able to become kind of really good at dealing with problems, not if they are met with, but when they are met with. And that this is where real experience becomes, and the real expertise is really going to tell. To gain full knowledge of, as full as we can, knowledge of what is going to kind of come based on the actions I'm taking now. And so here that, we need to become that sort of expert on the law of cause and effect. There's no way around that, that we are aware that if I engage in this course of action, it will lead to creating these causes, which are likely to realize these particular results, etc. And so this becomes very, very important that we are not just also relying on, following a rule from, knowledge that has been gained or wisdom that has been gained from learning, but we have deepened that through our own reflection. This is very, very important that we gain that wisdom arising from contemplation, so that it is a self-powered, self-realized logic that we are applying. And we say, okay, I'm setting up this action with this motivation, and that it is because of based on this reason, laying down this cause, which is likely to lead to this result. In other words, applying a logic that we have come to own for ourselves. And this is very, very important, I think, to be able to kind of create the habit of making, setting good motivations at the outset of every action.
Right, but daddy, oh, take 7 like it is another never need there. Take 7 like it, take 7 my but take my smoothing. What that didn't she gen? Right, metal and a metal 7 like it does. Metal 7 men and metal get to Martas. Right, and decay there, Koran Dujola, but do Namchilla, Paul season and do Carilla Kiki, you mean, Marazu, Penishimbachi, and Shimbati got to Taka Haku, till Chichi Taku. What in Nanshin Jedeta? There was a domestic, what Tagare? Rick to be killer, Rick to be Tewu Young Dutch. Ruati, that twin get the Java, and a tea table young to each. That the dead method the Karima D 70 and it do Tata Chilapa, do teacher, and it didn't 20 years I can get the Java and method get to take it to what a dinner that she could take a Jordan dinner, Langi could take a Jordan there. Because natural law Chipachari. What dinner she never need to each. Casella did a cooking, Casella Mogon, what did it? Good, Tata Marwa. Tata Marwa, what did she never need to each? What I need, the way you Matubana, what I get there, what dinner, there were you Martas. Tunga Jumaba ina, yet Tunga Mitova Inaya, Tunga Pang to Martas.
And so it's very much the case, that when we are talking about the law of cause and effect, that there is a certainty with regard to our thinking here. Similarly to the idea of, a seed being absolutely necessary, a rice seed, and absolutely necessary to be able to produce a rice crop. We have no doubt about that, have we? We know that without the seed, there can be no rice crop. Without the seed, there can be no flower growing. And so we have to become like that. We have to become not only certain understanding that particular fact, but also we have to become an expert at, just like a farmer is, about knowing the season, the timing involved in when we sow the seeds, how we arrange the soil, and the fertilizer, the rain, and so on, all the other cooperative conditions that must come about in order to be able to grow a crop and harvest the crop eventually. And so this is just like that kind of karmic pattern works in the external world, it works in the internal world as well of our minds. And this we should become absolutely certain of, that what the causes that we lay down are going to lead to results. There's no doubt about it. So we have to be extremely particular about what causes we are laying down in order that they lead to the desirable results. And so in this case here, it's kind of like a natural law. There is kind of like, this is the way things are. It's not something that's made up. This is a natural law. And so whether, we can't take a partial attitude to this and say, yeah, but, some of the causes are, I'll accept, but some of the causes are not necessary, like this. Take a half-hearted attitude. We need to be fully committed to the kind of law of cause and effect, and that that if we really serious about suffering, abandoning suffering, and we really are sure that suffering is something that is undesirable, then we have to work at it from the causal level. We have to abandon the causes. If we really desire happiness, peace of mind, etc., we have to establish that at the causal level. We have to lay down the causes of happiness. There is no kind of an alternative method here. And so this is something that we must be completely 100% committed to.
당보데 랑게 삼나 딱바치고레스 딱바치는 다와 좋아 딱바치는 로다 가자제 묘몽 온도 조고도 조금도 딱바치고레스 미게 온도 다 조고도 조고도나 아니 다 가자 저 가서 묘몽이 유라마다 가서 싱시도 내봐 자 세줘봐 왔다 들리잖아 왔다 가자 마당 왔지 뭐자 미당 와라 다 장로 템버 계획 초소다 계획 초라 아니 로규다 엔데네 아니 마요와치 마요 계획 초들에 시 미계획 초로 마요와치 초소 아니 리바 템버 차고서 아니 왔다 어딜 내봐 제도 같이 그랬어 어디서 딱 이제 거기에 미계획 초를 내봐 이나 들렸대네 레님바사 님바사올라 때네 아니 지금 장례네 셀레네 지금 요자 하신 니가를 내고 요바 인상 아니 디 마제베 탑시치 계획 초대 장례페 셀레페고 요바 인상 디 마게바 깨바치 깨바 권에 권도 패바치 디 때문에 또 지금 그래서 어디 숨고 요바 됐을 다 대자 말에 다 최대한 게 차를 있네 좋아 미계획 초계원도 랑게 지금 장라 수불에 내나자 용하다 강에만 보지 채고도 변에 채딜을 찾아봐네 근데 샘 기부 용문도 강에 채고도 봐 자다가 로경도 다 계획 초를 줘도 아니 지금 랑게 류기 대단하다 가이 내 팽기도 봐 보다가 이제 알리 최종 계정 마신에 샘기 최대한 게 참에 중식 코인년 마냥 대토네 그 지금 너무 맞잖아 변도 차유들 차고도 봐 내가로 찾아봐네
So the first verse for today is verse number 47. This is the brief exposition of that point, that how important it is to analyze one's motivation when engaging in any action. Verse number 47 reads, "Whenever I have the desire to move my body or to say something, first of all, I should examine my mind, and then with steadiness act in the proper way." And so here as well, like so whenever we engage in any movement of the body or have the desire to say anything, it's kind of like from the outset and prior to engaging in that, we should do a quick analysis of what it is the body is about to do, what it is that the mouth is about to say, and that to not allow it to be something that is non-virtuous. In other words, to have that steadiness of mind to maintain our thinking on the side of virtue. This is extremely important. And so it's kind of saying whatever we are about to do, that if it's a non-virtue, that we kind of say, oh, this is going to lead to a negative cause on the mind stream, that is inevitably going to lead to suffering for self and others, more likely as well. And it's going to be a harmful outcome regardless. Similarly, when we have virtue in the mind, that we can just as readily remind ourselves that, oh, that's going to lead down to a positive cause on the mind. It's going to lead to a happy result for myself and more likely for others as well. Also, of course, there's the health benefits to virtue and the health issues, problems from non-virtue. This has kind of been borne out in scientific research now, that when we engage in negativity, too much attachment, too much aversion in the mind, that it's a negative health outcome. And when we have a more virtuous attitude to life, it has beneficial health outcomes as well. So virtue helps.
我的这种没的，俺这个 가서라 다 거기에 저 꿀롱을 제바체 아니 되네요 저거다 라지 다가죠 로아 다가죠 가서라 다가죠 저 심제 술레인바이네 다 로즈 류가 예수 근에는 심제 술레이네 너가 지기만 너가 지기면 삼사제 만노가 규칙 너가 지기면 삼사 왔다 심제는 양양도 담자잖아 양양도 걔들 맛이 몽배 온게 파지 너바이네 너바데 패배교를 좋아쇼스네 너바데 너바 슉쳐도 게 삼로 마당 왔잖아 걔들 맛이 먹으면 너바이네 너바데 심제들 팬토베 깨도 좋아쇼스 가서 영화요라 너바데 파줘되게 야 잡아게 인제게 되게 쇠바게 되게 영화에 열봐 아니 파줘가 삼로 당시나 얘네 랑경원에 편받다네 다 소스 팬토바 지기 류기 토네 이네 나기 토네 임바 이네 아니 삼로 당당의 토네 임바 이네 예 심지어 팬토바 지기 있어 너가 자원이네 계기면서 걔들 얘가 나 레당보를 몽배 온게 예 팬토요 삼사드는 팬모도 너가 땡땡 용식이래 걔들 너바데 심제들 팬토베 교를 좋아쇼스 어떤 내가 삼로 당의 제가 임바 이나 아니 너바데 총도 줘해 연구로 아니 그때 소소 마셔 너바데 파조가 나라서 팬바당에다 들려지 아니 파조가야 지금 삼로데 가서로 다 인지결로 뭐서네 포지티브 삼로 당와이나 한 프랑을 팬토 연구로 와 와다 되게 간제 그 때문에 중앙인바에서 소소문에 삼로 당 파조가야 지금 가서데 지금 삼로 구양보를 당와이나 팬바 연구로 와 와다 간제 그 지금 어떤 데가 공부하시네 제가 이나 아니 소소가 지금 가서데 릉하고 토네 너바데 숙충도 줘야 아니 이거 토네 너베 삼로 코에 대해 숙충도 전 아니 가두이네 딱 거저 정바데 세생게 아니 가서도 지금 자라지에게 도나지에 고주 좋은데 아니 고주 좋은데 거다 다고 숙충도 줘다 이메다 거 다 줘버려 왔어
So motivation the examination of motivation is something which is a prerequisite to any decent spiritual action. So whenever we are about to engage in something, an action of body, speech, or mind, that we initiate that action with the motivation never initially to engage in any harm to any sentient being, and that always make a vow of that that we will try to be beneficial in whatever way we can. And if it should happen due to the fact that I am a beginner here, an amateur engaging in this, that even though my motivation is beneficial to try to be beneficial in body, speech, and mind, that if my actions through my own fault harm somebody else, that turn out to be a benefit, may that transform into something beneficial, like we make that prior aspiration to ensure that all of what we can do is as positive as possible, and that may it be beneficial. This is a wonderful way to reduce the influence of mental affliction in our mind, and that positivity of wanting to benefit all others. Even though we're awkward about it, we're amateur in our execution of our positive motivations, it's certainly going to have a positive impact on others as well. And so, and of course, implicit in all of this is also that we are constantly examining our motivation to ensure that it retains its sort of strength and purity through awareness and mindfulness, and that this is very much kind of a part and parcel of these kinds of actions.
편토도 몰람 때문에 아니 개디 마셔 먹고 너가 있네 너가도 패배교를 좋아서 수도 직선 기본이도 틀리잖아 너가도 패배교를 좋아서 왔다 들에 삼로당도 기부도 다 들에 인자 디야부도 어떤데서 공부하시잖아 들에서 공부하시네 다 간자 저 개디 마셔 먹고 너가 있대 아니 패배 한 삼장 어서 편토가 있네 심지어 감다 몇번 나서 봐라 감다 몇번 나서 봐 인데 가라서 폐인 삼 룽하게 편바인 삼자 제와 있는 코라를 몇 바차면 어디 세싱 말봐. 세싱 말해. 가서는 내 당보하게 편 토해서 가고 싶지 않다. 그래서 단위 전부 들려 가고 싶다. 산제 있는 낭제 그 편바 받이 줘 되고 열 봐. 그래. 다 이내 당 가라서 그는 꾸는다. 저 개천부 인바인도 어디를 전다 가지고 어디다 가지 지금 랑을 룽아 이웃인데 안에 섬절을 편배 교를 교하쇼. 어디를 삼다. 걔들 마셔 먹으면 녀바데 편배 교를 교하쇼. 스데 지 가서래 지금 샘 구양벌 정도도 와. 샘 구양벌 정도도.
So yes, this way of motivating, I say from my own experience, that engage in making aspirational prayers for others, taking the count, oh, may this prayer be a benefit to all sentient beings. May all my actions of body, speech, and mind be beneficial to all sentient beings. But even if they are not, even through some instance where harm occurs, may that transform into something which is beneficial for them. And by even making this prayer like this, it brings a certain lightness and happiness to my mind. It's something that is really, really helpful. And so, from the point of view of our motivation, of course, we want only a benefit to result in all our actions of body, speech, and mind. But we know ourselves that through the people have very varied dispositions, personalities, and so on, and may not understand our intentions. And then through kind of like our own awkwardness, kind of lack of expertise, that even though we have a beneficial motivation, some hurt may occur, and that we kind of want to kind of really take that into consideration and go, oh, may even that kind of misunderstanding that has led to some harm there, may it be ultimately beneficial always. And so we're not like the very high level practitioners and enlightened beings who are solely benefit without any doubt about it, without any errors and so on. And so we have to kind of really be careful with our motivation. As long as our motivation is as pure as it can be, and particularly taking into consideration where, oh, we might be awkward and make mistakes in our actions that cause harm, may this turn out to be something which is really, really beneficial. I think it allows us a little bit of open-mindedness that is very helpful in this kind of practice. So the second subheading around this major outline of the examination of the motivation prior to engaging in any action. This is the second of those subheadings dealing with it in a more extensive explanation. And this more extensive explanation has 5 different points to make. The first is what should we do when we desire a mental affliction to arise? Secondly, what is it that we do at a time when the mind is excited or too elevated? Thirdly, what is it that we do when we have this great desire for wealth and respect? And fourthly, what is it that we do when we are reflecting on the purpose of others or the benefit to others? And fifthly, what is it that we do when we have a desire to generate kind of anger or to develop a sense of discouragement or slackness in our attitude?
the concept. Rangi Chabatan, Choa Doba, Days, Leso Miba, Leso Micha, Mamicha, Xing to never chas.
And so the verse number 48 deals with this point, the first of these. And what is it that we do when we have that kind of desire to kind of give time to the mental afflictions? It says, whenever there is attachment in my mind and whenever there is a desire to be angry, I should not do anything nor say anything, but remain like a piece of wood. So this is the verse.
That Gangitse, what that's also Gangitse, the Dakaja Rangi Yila, and Chabakiwa, the Motobache, Yana, controls of the Kimona, the Tomache, Motobache. That is a less of Michawata, Chabaki, the Chabaches of Matawachen. And the controls of the condo the Shamad Matawachen, Takaja. That Nagi Mimawa, Mijawa, Chadan Nibul, and Nibusuna, Shingshu never just study Shamad Matawajet, get water.
And so this verse is explained as that any time when there is attachment arising in the mind, we see anger arising in the mind, then we should not follow the object of attachment in our minds. We should really apply counter forces to the anger that we see in our minds. This begins with say, okay, don't engage in any physical action or any verbal action at that time, but apply the antidote to attachment and aversion by remaining like a piece of wood, just absolutely still.
Nema Geshe Ben Gunjel Chik Sungayoba, Kasana, Geshe Ben Gunjel, Java Chizu Java, Kona Lochabo, the Java Chizu Java, Java did my dedu, Casa, that's all my dear on do. Commander in the mountain, they do Logan Shumarwa, Casa Lava Kishua, Sutavangela Chavina, Tingel Tegerwa, and Lava Shoba Chelatera, Lochamo in a wall there. And Geshe Ben Gunjel, Java. Choose the Java is the Lochabo and the Java, and Kona Shusa the Ma Casa de Tata de Category, and the Yarnet Sun, Summer Retreat Sun, Yammer Yarnet Sun, and Shodin, and short Choba PH, said Bella, Shodin said Choba Pionto, and then you get short looking at the gate, and then Yella you get the color you get to the Chicago, Penchable Lugu Sarwa. Lord, oh, Tangala Rasamari. Today, Mabulu Rasamari and Combachadua. That ranches the game Warwa, Rasamari. And the Shomune Leon, the Shomato, not again the two signs. Captain Channel, not short again the two signs, but not short again the Rasus, Takanja, Shomalemba, but what I get in the Captain Channel. Or Takaja did no one Captain Channel, your brother. Not sure to get the last house large, show my
And so the account of from the story of Geshe Ben Gungel, a very famous practitioner. And this was very early in his monk's career. He hadn't just become ordained, and so as is tradition in the monastery, in the temple, when doing puja and prayer, the monks all sit in order of seniority. So those who have been ordained the longest are at the head of that line, and those who have been ordained most recently are at the very end of the line. And this, of course, was Geshe Ben Gungel. He was at the very end of the line. In any way, it was at that time of the year, just after the summer retreat, when often there was an extra offering given to the monks. In this case, it was in the form of yogurt that some sponsor had come forth to give the monks yogurt. And of course, as per tradition, they start to serve out the yogurt at the head of the monks line, the monks that are most senior, and that. And Geshe Ben is at the very end of the line, and he's very interested in the yogurt offering. He's very much desiring some of this yogurt, but he's looking at the person who's ladling it out from a large container and getting worried about how much he's giving to all the different monks, saying, oh, look at, if they keep getting that much, there won't be any left for me by the time it gets down to me. And so he was getting very concerned and anxious about whether he gets some yogurt or not. But by the time the sponsor came down to his spot and was about to give him yogurt, he said, oh, no, thank you. I've already had my yogurt. And this was his way of opposing the mental afflictions that because basically he was saying, look, I've already drunk it in my mind. So thank you. I don't need any right now.
Geshe ben kunje de nyama de chakwa de kuma de jade nyama chawa meme kanla inde kuma de chakwa de jamte de ane korang dos komshi so je ta jela me korang sem do atechene ane chabache je korang iga cham desa shu ane korang le roba je jenda josa jenda de ane jenda ge nima je jenda nang le chinde ta namju je chawa da lama de ge chogan na shagur wa ko ta 컴바 개치슈들 디나라 산제 구수투들 다 그렇죠. 디나샤 엔데를 자라 개치하들 샤고로 안 지다 배바 자라 가보러 와 자동에 잡여자 자동에 가보래. 근데 이 잡박 중선 자 이제 블록들 용 어디네 야보들 샤서 어야 님마 검식이 같이 키고도 어서 아니 되네 라바야 잡사데 아니 남장 삼을 거도 어다들 누구 말했으면 ane lagwa ya jiga juu chane, ane kuma do sa, ane jidala kuma kawal, kuma des. Wadile kato nyambo ten chane. Wadile nanga iswa, sanyi mi chakachi. Kasi dade tenshe ka sungu yora, to wadile cha da tenshe ka sungu, di runga mare.
So another story from Geshe Bengungyal, and of course it's understood that prior to Geshe Bengungyal becoming a monk, he had a different career completely. He was an actual bandit who terrorized the area around where he lived. And so there are other stories leading up to when he had this massive change of heart and he became a monk and so on. And he was doing retreat in a certain place. And at one stage he was invited by his sponsor for a meal, I think, to come to his place and so on. And as per tradition, he was kind of like put to sit in the kitchen area, and the sponsor went off to prepare something. But as Geshe Bengungyal was sitting, he noticed a large container of tea, something which is very highly valued by Tibetans in general. And the old thinking came back into Geshe Bengungyal's mind. He said, oh, that looks like really nice tea. I think I'll take some. And so he stretched out the hand to grab some of this really high quality tea. And then his mindfulness and alertness kicked in. And he goes, this is obviously not right. This is not the right thing to do. And so he actually grabbed the hand that he was reaching out with his other hand. So he had a hold of his hands like so. And he started shouting out, thief, thief. And the sponsor came running in a panic, say, where? And he said, here. And he's accusing his own hand of being the thief. So this was kind of his way of directly applying the antidotes through, with the help of his mindfulness and alertness.
그래서 그런 게 다 저기 자와 가르치면 때 룽다 모르는데 제바지기도 왔다. 인데서 다도 룽고 말이 삼사 왔다가 저 왔던데잖아요. 다가 저기 대중가 저 가소래다. 전세기 아니 제바 다가 저기 가소래 다가 저 라레 냠네 지단게 답에 테크닉으로 왔다 거라서 탑시시로 와. 왔던데잖아. 다가 뒤에 전세 인데서 지 고소받아 남자 때 룽다 모르 배는 초밥 표바이네 초밥 배는 그런 전다 이게 참가를 폐기했을라도 들이 전다 남주시다 다지 지구에서 말에 소소 검자들 저 시우지 장마 시우에서 뭐 되니까 전다 폐기를라다 쇼간도 장마 다 수서 장마서 윤잡도 배 인도 가버렸어 아니 한 제와한테 취할 침도 침모도 제바 지구 열어 예 제의 최저도 레모도 최저도 제바 제원도 그때 최저 말에 제가 마변에 피그로 와 다들에마다 제가 피그에서 표 인사 어떤 게도 최저 지금도 직전 추기해서 나 텔라톤에 슈버 봐 뭐다 그때 가서 마시 슈인터서 뭐다 되네 어디래 인도 즉 이제 제바체네 최저도 레모도 제바체네 이래서 가서 가라서 내 당보하라 아니 저 검시 침모여라 직전 추기 검시 빼쳐 모여라 와 생게 야고도 야고래 라베가 라와카나 칸이 라와 똥바지 칸이 아니 처마 임바찬네 딱 깔래 잡 깔래도 처음에 결을 배주 당 되지 안 되는 미즈 촐라 당 거라다
So this process of immediate questioning of whether what we are about to do is correct or incorrect, appropriate or inappropriate. This is what's being demonstrated here. And it's done through this familiarity with mindfulness and alertness, and that ensuring that the pure motivation that we've begun with is carried out, that we get the benefit of that. And this is like, as Geshe Ben Gyungyo is pointing out, this is a kind of like practitioner's technique. This is what they can bring into play to make sure that they stay on the straight and narrow, and that this is a very, very important. It happened in there's another story related to him too, in terms of offerings. So he's in his small little cave hut, and he's been told that his sponsor was going to arrive that day, and so normally speaking, that Geshe Ben Gyungyo so intensely practicing praying and so on, that he didn't pay a lot of attention to his altar and the arrangements of all the objects, but he started to really clean up, and he made beautiful arrangements in his altar and cleaned the place entirely, and then sat down, and then he started questioning, why did I do all this? Was this something purely motivated, or was it because I was told my sponsor is coming today? And so he concluded through his mindfulness and alertness that actually he was involved in the 8 worldly concerns here. He's got expectations, and so this is why he changed things around. And in his realization of this, he simply grabbed up some dust from the floor and flung it around to kind of like show that he shouldn't have done what he did with that faulty motivation. And so it's very, very important that we as beginners, we kind of recognize if what we are about to do, is it Dharma or not? Is it on the side of virtue or not? And is it really bound up with the 8 worldly concerns or not, which is more of a pressing issue for us as beginners, because we're very much mired in the 8 worldly concerns, attaching so much expectations to what we do and so on, isn't it? And that we have to recognize that if we are engaged in any activity, particularly in Dharma activity, wrapped up in the 8 worldly concerns, that we're really wasting our life, we're wasting time. It's nothing to do with Dharma.
我的，他的那里面的这点出现里面的我主要真输出的东西，而且太了多的那个解码都把引把引那样，解码都把引把引那样，那个第几点出现了，现在全嘛引把差不多，这我这边头呢，那刚都过几点出现了，马上要他去接，当然那些当然的。如果这个说的调查结果呢，看着我的调查结果，错落实把这个个这个结把这调查的了，顾客买这个，我大概就说3六错起来样，调查一帮我说呢，的了顾客买这个样，这个说的这个3六个团呢，可能家人说了钱呢，我听了这，看着结果呢，当然看着结果有呢，看着结果的我说吧，真的아니 다 컨트롤 삼로 마다리 신신을 내가 자 송도 왔다든 저 간자 컨트롤 사바 기거는 다 띵뭐 쳐봤잖아. 가서 어디 컨트롤 기야 망쳐서 가서 컨트롤을 라til라 아니 디 컨트롤 로아체를 좀세 망아 삼로 다도 컨트롤 기기도 와. 컨트롤이 반은 미지게 책 도자 시야봐 있나? 아니 거기 Geje Shedan, Namju Dunda, and Jumzama, Ching Samlotani, and control the Stambus Magiwaji Cha, Magiwa Chawa de la Dene, and was it Jumze Samlotangua. Courage and Lavina. Oh, Kongala Chone Kagi, you some Harta. Sing down. Oh, Quati Lavieti, me manada ticket, me Mambukila loves one, not the most house of not neck Hamazu. Kachaka, Jumzen Samlotani, and Mikey but the shook cheddar, so I to. And a delight in a corner gig to her. Tambu Mikey but cha. And Mikey but D, and Mikey but Dilla, and a robot Marazo missing a Namju is a Namju D, and Jumzen Samustangua. Jumzen de Takajana, Condo Mikey was shook cheddar to Condo gig and Jumzen Samutangua. And a delight and a condo gig to her. To a child Chigbarwa. Chicken any Tenet to a child chola some tea rock watching some mother and to a child ya shook cheddar. Tambani no what shook somebody your marvel. Takanja taking a dealer because of the Kuka Marteva Cherry Sunguya. She should have never just said it. Never just and Taran young cola young, Lord the Kigo to not Lord de la young, lost so much captain and tea. That Toma Mevangala never get it to the quality nature, but as a that I didn't get Google taking medicine. Yeah, so the choice about in some look and some look on a opposition doing it until a Kuka Mateva. Control at dinner, what that Toma Mevanga and me do it to me young to get you with the tea. Then some look on the kill you and get the Kuka taking medicine till a opposition logic kitchen till a Kuka Martin. What the legend and what shook to the Chuntai. Was it that I go logic on the till a job George and rank some new chance at the job and it does I care, Kondo care, Shatan care, you don't take your
So it's kind of always advisable to do whatever we can to reduce the instance and influence of the 8 worldly concerns in our lives. And whereas it may not be necessary to kind of throw dust around, yet we should do whatever we can to avoid any occurrence of the 8 worldly concerns. And in terms of here talking about, that the attachment and anger and so on in this verse, that we have to understand that in both cases, they are, as it were, assisted by overthinking that lead to the actual kind of flowering of this anger and this attachment. And so we have to be, this is where mindfulness and alertness comes in to cut off the faulty reasoning at the root, so that you don't get this growth of attachment and anger. So it's kind of like here we need to get to the point where we never give an opportunity to this nascent attachment or anger to actually develop at all. And so that means we have to develop a mind that is going to challenge the initial thinking that goes together with attachment and anger. Very, very important. In some cases, yes, you may remain like a piece of wood, but it's also important to recognize as early as possible when the initial kind of movements of anger take effect. So somebody is there, maybe insulting you or using negative language with regard to you, and you're starting this process of overthinking, saying, why did they say that? They're totally justified in what they were saying. They used that terrible language and so on. And so you've got to this point now where you are discontent. You are discontent and you are starting, the mind is uncomfortable, upset. This is only going to lead to anger. Anger that is being fueled by your own faulty, fake reasoning. And so this is where intelligence becomes a disadvantage to you, and that you're using it in the wrong way. And so here, kind of like, allow that faulty intelligence to kind of assist in turning your unhappiness into full-blown anger, into swelling into anger. The same applies to attachment. We know that very well, that it doesn't start out like something that is very powerful or comprehensive, but we actually then start feeding it with other thoughts, and that again, with the fake reasoning, our intelligence coming in, this kind of painting that object of attachment as something that's highly desirable. I must have it. It's great, perfect, no faults, etc. But we need to to cut that line of reasoning off very, very quickly. And this is where our mindfulness and alertness must come in, to be able to spot the danger, to sniff out that danger very, very quickly, so that no opportunity is given to that reasoning, and that we can oppose that. We know, say, look, if I'm going to keep thinking like this is only a one-way ticket to remaining in cyclic existence indefinitely, And so it's kind of like, say, in regard to anger, you kind of reach that early recognition of the signs. You say, not today. Not today. I'm not going to start reasoning down the hill to outright rage. I'm not going to involve myself in that sort of thinking. And in this way, we start to really reduce the potency of that kind of thinking. We really start to really disown it. And a very, very important aspect of that is, of course, mindfulness and alertness.
가서 콘도 사원도 당가서 지금 생각 너바지 겨와나 남장 콘도도 뭐 말해서 남장한테 셈 마디와 좀 그랬어. 마디와도 콘도가 세des. 아니 딜라데네 아니 금전 삼로 당내는 콘도 기게 됐어. 좋아. 어때? 다저 셈 마디와 정도는 아니 삼사 친구를 오다나 삼사 마디와 이나 딜라데네 콘도 기게 돼. 콘도 깨나 라신 니가를 누그래. 사는 삼로 당 그랬어. 다 디디지 가서 국업도 와. 뒤 국업도 쇼아이나 다 아니 컨트롤 깨 사서는 아니 거다 내가 좀 컨트롤 깨 마셔나 답시시야 매딩 들어와 제 아니 지금 이 지금 랍제 잡아 있네 딜레케제 독자시 되게 왔다 컨트롤 사사도 거 백문도 백말에 다 거기 컨트롤 마도 마차가 봐도 백문도 이 이상 먼저 컨트롤 사사도 아니 미니데 계제시도 계제 독자도 안 잘 컨트롤 마시죠 잘 미드 통동 못 사기도 못 사기도 아니 커피에서 용접하는 유연 조국도 왔다 가지나 그래서 컨트롤 시험한觉得 让了 拉萨了 让了 拉萨的 我就觉得他感觉让了 마셔와 제대로 개체 못해도 와 되는데 거기서 뭐 이거 내주도 좀 더네 아니 여자마요 답시 소도도 와 어디데 참 간제 가이나 마이나 어디데 저는 되게 다 갑도 못쳐도 받지 그랬어 아니 되게 연구 유매 용데 숙처도 만들어다 가르삼 당고 유매 가르삼 당고 어다들에서 다 지금 먼저 다 남주디 먼저 라네 따그면서 합 갈다 저기 내라고 진게 말대 얘네 양고다 직 삼다 니 삼다 송서 간사스나 거 뒤제 손나 만해 봐 이제 간사스는 내라고 차두고 와 내라고 차두고 와 계세 다니 좀 사토벌 내게 저 코나들 강에 책이 요 말. 가서 당보 나라서 나시 내 당보 갈 코나들 강에 책이 요. 이내 다 코나 저 들레 전에 아니 지금 남네 제발할 때는 남신한테 가슴에 맞춰라 때는 탈지는 다 발효도 좀 받지 와. 당번에 발효도 좀 차요 말와. 어디래래.
And so then it becomes quite important, isn't it, that we are able to reduce the unhappiness, unhappiness arising in the mind, initiating in the mind, that this is something very important. But as beginners, we often do the opposite, that we are unhappiness is something that we then promote. It increases in the mind. And then before we know it, we're full on angry. And so it kind of like really have to work at being able to really understand the kind of like the life journey of anger, not at the end of it when we are already, in a rage, but where it began. And that Master Shantideva points out in this very text, talking about the arisal of anger. He says it's not full-on anger, full-blown anger to begin with, that we have to point it out at the point when it becomes just a slight discomfort in the mind. We are uneasy about something, and that's then that is kind of fueled, fed, and turns into anger. And instead, that at that point, it's only going to be of harm to yourself and others, and so it's kind of not the point to be able to do that, because we know that as well. Like, if we're that angry, we're not going to listen to decent advice from somebody who is calm and anything. We're just up for confrontation, and so it's very, very important that there kind of there's no benefit to anger. It's often the case, isn't it, when we calm down again, that we're totally embarrassed about our behavior. And we might meet the person who we were confronting the day before, and we cross the street because we're too embarrassed to meet them and say hello. So it's kind of like recognizing too that with anger, there is a complete loss of power, loss of freedom. You have no freedom if you're angry. You're caught in a very narrow frame of reference there. And so we have to really understand the journey of anger, how it started, how it came about, and to become really expert at being able to identify the signs, the telltale signs of early anger, where it's only at this point a discomfort, and be able to oppose it at that time, to really not allow it to be able to kind of grow at all, and to give it no kind of oxygen at all. So it's very, very important that we kind of see that we can do this, and I'm no practitioner, but I do believe that when we are able to form a habit like this, that it will bring improvement, and that this is so important, kind of like when we are habituated to something, be able to adjust our thinking in this way and to apply mindfulness and alertness in this way. And that I think it will bring great improvement, because it will reduce the instances of anger in your life on a day-to-day basis. And even though, we're a long way from perfection now, but it sets you on that road to perfection.
Niba da goba soge tse ene chida chawa nisa ruwa goba soge tse chida chawa nisa zawa le goya da kasha cheba gede ngaje jagdenba sangzhu bayi samba tang gede gyorje lusim sam kanse dagdu lulemba shenla mewa nidani sheje geda che juba dese shingshin never chas.
The next of these subheadings says, what is it that we do at a time when the mind is excited or elevated? And this is the following two verses, verses number 49 and 50. Whenever I have distracted thoughts, the wish to verbally belittle others, feelings of self-importance or self-satisfaction, when I have the intention to describe the faults of others, pretension, and the thought to deceive others, whenever I am eager for praise or have the desire to blame others, whenever I have the wish to speak harshly and cause dispute, and at all such times I should remain like a piece of wood.
Sim yu shenla da chowe goba tang gasha chita shege tang jeba o jeba gede sim kengbe asa da jiu sosu shivu yin samsang ngake tang ane tang da tangba soge gyagba tang gyagba ne 어떤 여기서도 지금 나제다 당대 때부 소지 자와다 때부 다 생기 견장 좋아 다 생기 교게 찾아 봐셔대 또 선바당 게데 겨울진데서 총미심을 요구 다가 제치 샤로 요구치 루어서 봐 강게체 다 그듯이 가면 임바이네 연대 제대 다 연대 제대 달아 되어 룰려봐 교제의 샬라메바 니단다 다 소소라 지금 소소修지 인도저 소소 랑라 지금 연대 찬에 되어 제대 소소 아니 교제의 샬라메바 데스 시행기 차라리 교제 메바 니당 니 셰바다 제바다 수여진 개바다 제바 교디세 이 미요와 신시도 내봐 줘 다들 지금 다가 지금 근데 레다 소소 생기 경계 차네 답에 교회 차네 줘. 야 랑게 연대 차네 줘도에 되게 심주야. 어디 다 간제 되게 중요한데 아니 뒤 쳐서 먼저 왔잖아. 나 쳐서 먼저 왔잖아. 다 간제 지금 뒤 교도 막고 봤잖아. 다 지금 뒤 쳐라 삼로 마다의 신신을 내가 자수를 어디
And so these both these verses really summarized into the kind of elucidating the faults of others, or either that or wanting our own great qualities to be published, publicized. And it's kind of really saying, in either way, don't go there. So it's here whether we are having distracted thoughts, we're kind of like distracted from what we should be focused on, and enticed into a distraction, or we are belittling others, like laughing at others. We have this arrogant attitude of pride, or we are a self-satisfied kind of person. If we are that much, we're really interested in describing, publicly describing the faults of others, or that we have this really attitude of great pretension, as well as that, kind of like really never being satisfied. Also, operating through guile and deceit in all sorts of deceitful ways, reflecting in that way. If we want others to praise us, to outline our good qualities, that if we are constantly blaming others, or have the thought to blame others, to speak harshly, as it says here, also meaning to argue, be argumentative, and divide others. That all of this here is saying we should really not allow the mind to be so kind of like moved in this way, but to remain unmovable in one's focus of mind, and therefore remain like a piece of wood.
다가 지다로 앞에는 저기 자기스 멜라잖아래 셀라 교주체 저랑 십지 인사도 고도 미롱을 왔다가 될 때가 되는 용을 깨고요. 왔다 에리 셀라 동중지 교주체의 용되게 열와 용되게 열와 왔다 되게 온도 맞춰져. 다가 이제 신의 연대 강토도 죄투에 랑기 연대데 강토도 배투에서 고요. 랑의 연대 강토도 마배 배 신의 연대 강토도 에는 거 봤어와치 어디든 당가라도 가서는 신의 연대 배 견세와치 랑의 견배 연대 안다 연애면은 미세다 야변답지에 지어봤다. 어디든 같이 가서도 다디 가서는 차단계 돈을 용되게 열어봤다. 용되게 도와.
So, as is very clearly outlined in the Bodhisattva actions whereby, to be very, very aware of criticism of others, of self-praise and so on. And that as these kinds of this kind of thinking leads to mental affliction, or they are already afflictive thinking. And so, on the other hand, be proactive about publicizing others' good qualities, and be proactive about hiding one's own qualities. And that so this is how we ought to behave. See, we as beginners, we're kind of like focused almost exclusively on the other, isn't it? That we fail to praise others for their good qualities, but rather expose their faults. We fail to hide our own good qualities, but rather hide our own faults. And so this is the kind of the opposite of what we should be doing. And this is kind of really just on the side of attachment and aversion, isn't it? It's kind of like falling under that kind of the auspices, or categorized in that way, as acts of attachment, acts of aversion. And so we ought to change around here, to expose our own faults, to hide our own good qualities, to not to out the negativities of others, but to really be proactive about publicizing their good qualities.
我大感觉给持续的，我大感觉，俺好多个这个个说的国外往个，俺的这个新个捐大这个的这个社会主义呢，刚啥的捐你1万钱，刚啥的捐你1万钱，俺的捐个钱呢，让国外往个的，俺的捐的这个说的买不起一个，他这个制度，俺捐个团呢，社会主义嘛呢呀。 捐的刚才你也话是刚才了，在我的规则，第一话第一往个，你捐的没有说是他们出去，我的真的，他讲的这个的我规划往个，但是呢这个结果呢判断也话通过多了，你捐给他那样，我觉得有个规划往个，但判断也话通过不多了，我呢这个项目我带上，我判断有没有在上面考不起，第下话人呢，你可能捐的我这那样，判断就也话人不人呢，就是大大一百亿呢，那我那是老话讲的，我就是现在都要刚上可能在我的规则上，你第捐的没法参与启动，对吧？他捐的set up，人家偏偏我给解决用过了，我到捐呢看样马些的给这马的，但我说他牛梦就了么多是够有吧？你捐的同样的，让个牛梦就了多呢，让了没有说。 牛梦觉了蛮多，这个的捐托呢，刚才的捐你1万钱呢，刚才在我的人阶段，这个的1万钱，偏是1万钱，第一圈呢，你捐的没不所谓，他们捐主要怎么的，捐的没不所谓，他们第二这个对大，不是那个这个对大的开个多呢，通中的开税的，等下嘛1万钱的，这个往给，偏偏上面往给。
Of course, what is really at the heart of these verses is something the most important and special, is that it's not like we kind of ignore all fault here, but when we need to address fault in another, that we make a clear distinction between the person and their behavior, and so we maintain a sense of respect, love, compassion for the person, and then we really carefully address the fault or the issue or the problem. That means that we generate a mind of benefit, that if we are seeing that we have a plan to quietly and privately address the problem, the fault, that it's definitely going to be a benefit. If it's not going to be beneficial, then we shouldn't proceed with it. But that we are always aware that when it comes to eradicating that fault, that it's going to be something which is a benefit, and that we are looking into it in terms of the personality of the person that we're going to speak with, and the timing, which is very, very important about how we do that. and to always in our motivation maintain the love, respect, and compassion for the person, and focus then on eradicating the actual fault. So that includes also checking in our own attitude, that there is no trace of mental affliction in our thinking and in our process. And this is very, very good, that it's only a mind of benefits that suffuses all of what we're about to do.
그래서 괜히 세게 탑시도 뭐이나 세게 온게 세게 탑시도 뭐이나 들고 편도로 봐. 괜히 세게 대지만 괜히 코란체는 샤샤바이나 거기 안고 내려면 배게 말봐. 배 말봐. 거기 괜히 와이네 괜히 세게 탑시.
So there's a clear distinction, isn't there, between the process of and the action that we undertake to eradicate the fault, because we see that as being harmful to the other person, and therefore we should do it, as opposed to our kind of free criticism of the fault, which is only going to not benefit the fault and harm the person. And so this is where we should make that distinction.
This
is called being skilled in means. Okay, so let's leave it there for today.
아까 이제 개치주 다다 가서 보고 가르친 거 열었으나 아니 가서 나라족에 남주게 삼로 땅땅 거 저는 가라서 미패박의 지당 거 저는 간에는 녀모게 국가도 가서 그와 점점 밀레니아 권에야 녀모게 주도와 아니 소소야 시우지 인도 나게 깨는 지기도 와서 야 셰게 교육을 타는 계제시네 나게 깨는 야 녀모게 주고도 와서 아니 가서도 양 가서 나라도 중국인 스마트인 도도 지거되네 고고 땅에 요규시네 야 지기도 서 가서 참보이나 마찬가 쇠네 아니 지금 소소들 가그면도라 아니 마가와 들었더니 야 미파조도 참보 매버서네 지기지에도 와서 딱 이제 안 들렸잖아 야 랑이 유네주 아니 샬 마법지에 지도 못 와서 딱 가서 나라도 레당보가 삼로 땅다 마틱바 먹고 들었더니 딱 지금 녀모를 국가 쉬우지라고도 왔다 뒤치주기가 말을 숨고도 왔다 나도
So in this case too, you know, what's really interesting and very important to focus on is that this is a list of in these two verses of really saying, watch out for these mental afflictions. Do not give any opportunity to any of these states of mind when engaging in any kind of activity. And that especially in regards to helping others, or indeed just discussed about helping them with their problems or issues, faults and so on. That it's very, very important that we maintain that distinction between the person and their behavior and their actions, and that we don't enter into anything with this sort of superior idea, this arrogance and pride of I know better, you know, that I'm the smart one here, and therefore there is a sense of guile, deceit to our advice and our actions and so on. So it's kind of very, very important that we don't do that, because that will be found out, and we will both lose the opportunity for benefit from that situation and probably lose that potential friendship as well. So very important that we are in no way seeking to increase you know, recognition of our own good qualities for any reason whatsoever, and that to be able to spot the very first moment of afflicted thinking in this regard, and to kind of make sure that that plays no part in or what is going to happen next. And so we need to never give any opportunity to mental affliction.
어떨지 다 되게 지가서도 되레되레잖아. 아니 녀모를 고급 라서 되게도 멋있대네. 멋있대네. 아니 되게들 아니 고급대 마셔왔지. 아니 녀모를 고급 말아봐 탑시 쇠제. 아니 왔다들 아니 탑시 찍제 니제 숨제 간삼선아 아니 다 지금 가서도 더 가서도 다들 가서 계속 다니 전부 속에 남는 건데 저번에 제도가 여기 랑기 가서다 지금 뉴바스 기한 거와 뉴톱 기한 거라 다들 디 맞아 있는 것도 셈 상부 기야 있는 디바치는 쇼트고도 숨고 열와 당 것도 남주 검식 오게 딜레 삼로 당에서 왔더니 아니 너무 기한 것도 다스 디 기야 있는 아니 말해서 삼로다 야고 기고 심지어 담자 산제 고마 두고 인 쓰고 열때 어때는 좀 맞은 디바치는 옵스티컬 뭐도 다스 그 옵스티컬 디가 건가 매워 속으로 다스 디 써봐 이나 아니 저랑 싸만이 좀 두고 내가 숨고 열와 다 된다 되도
And so from our point of view as beginners, it's often the case of recognizing that the mental affliction has already arisen in this case. And so that's when we say, I don't want to do anything else to promote this kind of mental afflicted thinking. I need to stop this here and now. And so, when we are, setting out to do this, it can be daunting. In fact, there's so much of our thinking is afflicted in that way. But it's the power of habituation again. After twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times thinking like this, it's become more natural for us to be able to deal with the afflicted thought that has arisen, and become even more expert at being able to prevent it before it has arisen. And so in this way, this is how all the great beings, holy beings of the past started, by trying to create a habit on the positive side, in this way, making it, that their go-to position, go-to thinking is very, very important. And to not to be caught in a situation where we kind of living in this kind of like slightly fantasy land where we think we have a good mind, that we don't allow mental afflictions to arise, and that but we don't want to kind of engage in serious business of dealing with the mind, dealing with what arises in the mind, because we think, oh, I've got so many obstacles in my life. This is kind of preventing me from being a better practitioner. Whereas, we should be looking at obstacles that the main purpose of obstacles should be that they are to be overcome.
Yeah, what was it? Yeah, and the was doing the set of Lama Shajas to a set of the set up just shut to share what the share. What the legend and the comes from Dwari to Kawakiwa in a young, and it was a Takaja because of the Takaja to make a ranchil midavare. To make a ranchil midavare, and quite an attempt to touch Martin to calling a much when you choose some top. And some of the Tendego Lotte, Rangi, Chiwola, and a chicken, Bamata Desert to so something. That Chinanga choke and Yumba Yina Yang, and a chicken, that you didn't do what it, but use out your maris. Because choke a lecture for chicken, because Casola Taka, Chirana social condition, but did to Walla, and a chicken, because of the Chashama was trying to go with was did to do dark around to my Tatingos, what damage one said was. Damage what around my Tatingo Yodas, what the combat Sachin, and Kachaka of the Semtor Sachin, and a day, the name even Lotti, Kachakazam even Lotti, and you make him when Yaka to sources of payment. Then what are the day by that same Tamjak to Sunday combat to be, what are 2 2 to 2 2 大概就新疆3节差不多，新疆年中给叫杨这个到位给了3出2个3节差不多，可让我的主办呢，新疆让我中国差多没有？真的，因为我大国家都是呢，那新疆他们这个都3节国嘛，我都他们经什么乱七给了，但那个对不对？单位经过人家讲话就说啥子，真的办的这个那么就，大概就我们在跟着古中推荐，我就在真的顺着讲的，单位告诉我赔，那么特别我。你不要告诉顺便告诉，但是3节国嘛都得接着说的，那在那养了都把面对的交配，我觉得不行。
So then we start to focus on the visualization in front, and that setting up an appropriate seating arrangements on our own crown prior to the inviting of the Buddha to come there. reflecting on the fact that we're all in cyclic existence, and that here the very fact of it being in this broken system is that we're going to encounter suffering. It's inevitable, and that how we develop renunciation of this, really through our knowledge of it, through recognition of the pervasiveness of that suffering. Say how wonderful it would be if you could really gain a definite emergence from this suffering reality. And from that mindset arises the Lotus Mandala seed. And then through reflecting on the fact that all inner and outer phenomena lack any true or objective existence, even at the atomical level, and really reflecting on that to the point where the mere absence of that object of negation, and that from that, we can see that phenomena cannot exist in the way that they appear. Therefore, that's a sign that they exist independence on everything else. It's like that understanding gives rise to the sun disk mandala seed, and that when we understand the import of dependent origination, that phenomena, because they cannot exist truly, they must, they cannot exist independently, they must arise independence on something else. That gives us the possibility of working towards the state of enlightenment, of saying, this verifies the motivation of enlightenment of bodhicitta, and that brings forth the moon disk mandala seeds. So we have established the seating, and now we make the invocation first. O glorious and precious Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here upon my head. Keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first, the figure of the Buddha moves towards us. At the end of the second recitation, takes his seat on our crown. And at the end of the third, we have that certainty that the Buddha will remain until we attain the state of enlightenment itself. We rejoice in this fact, and then we make the offerings of the 7 limbs of practice and the mandala offering.
가자 가자 돼서 언제는 게 아니 지가서데 가자 가자 예배 로 다가라 아니 님의 경우 약화 주소 섭서 되는 just 담제 고만 요원이도 마다가 지금도 토바 지기 섭서 로치 삼로다 되게 뒤바티 아니 다외 경우 약화 주소 반대절 라마를 무슨 다리 님가 때문에 가지고 고소도 좀 무도 자도 답이 가도 저 니베 가도 수배가 되는 산제 공마 토바 제수소 섭서 어디로 고마시 되는 배마다지 맞죠 가마 좀네 남준인들 데이터 도지고 상가 하자 이 타고도 때문에 상가 타도 뭐는 스타도 뭐는 서테스 저버숨 거죠 되네 저도 자매면서 오마라 바자나 디디디디 되네 되는 거 예담에도 마셔만에 있어 되는 무슨 거 어디로 고마시
So then we start the process of preparing suitable seats at our own heart center for the inviting of the Buddha there. And we begin again by focusing on renunciation, the fact of cyclic existence being in the nature of suffering, and our powerful desire to be free of that suffering. And from that sense of emergence from cyclic existence arises the lotus in this mandala seed. And then this I, wishing to gain liberation from cyclic existence, this I, striving to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Where is this I looking to the body and mind for this, objectively appearing, objectively existing self, and not finding it? We just have this placement meditation on the very fact of the lack of inherent existence or objective existence of the object of negation. And from that, then arises the moon disk, the sun disk mandala seed. And again, through the affirmation of the law of cause and effect, the process of dependence, giving us the certainty, the clarity, and the reasoning behind having a motivation to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings arises like the moon disk mandala seed. And so we make the invocation verse: O glorious and precious Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here on my heart, keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the attainment of body, speech, and mind. The figure from our crown moves down through that chakra into the central channel, and then oh glorious and precious Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here at my heart, keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the attainment of body, speech, and mind. Moves down through the central channel to arrive at our pre-prepared seed. At the end of the third recitation, we have the certainty that the Buddha will remain there until we attain the state of enlightenment. And we rejoice at that point, and then the petals of the lotus fold over and are joined at the tips by a white five-pronged semi-badger. And they're surrounded by three mantras: the main mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination in a clockwise direction.
오늘다 이제 랑게 닝기 유소 아니 저가서도 라마샤자 쓰기 또 셰자 용소 가지고 어떤 데 유어 상사제는 어다데 아니 되네 라마샤자 쓰기 구송 툴에 아니 배워서 봐도 매버트는 랑게 지원에 간디 발로서 좋아한테는 통화매워서 디바트 개발되었다 소주와 마지막 민상을 저 전통만 책좀 맞지 나서서 로다도 쳐봤다 가자 가서 제발 하나 마도 와다 라신 하나 마도 내봐다 제대로 그렇게 쌓여 버리나 저 깨번에 제 단답도 그렇게 쌓여 버리나 디 생각만 토마 매번 사베 디바데 디바치고 담자 바 장치 다도서 그와 당시 소다가 돈 받을 거와 자주스면 라바다 거와 상하게 다제다 거와 바다 말라 먹고 받아 저벌로 먹고 받아 좋아서 좀 나로 먹고 받아 구조술로 뇌에 내지 마 담배 취해봐 밥에 준비로 구하다 와 심절로 뇌에 내지 마서 뒤만 집에 소 다게 개와 생이 개와 생기벌 제수 이런 도나 토레도 답이 계속 코아데 계속 얘도 초치져 받아 장치 따고 제도 종수 성서 장치 따고 종수 성서 어떤 공부시 안다는지 류빈 나서 생도 동네 아니 저기 조시 코만이 와 자롱 틀레 견 그래서 장치 따고 저도서 나 하도도 뉴도 산제 고마 도발라 타메가 나제 견 치신이 뭐서 타메가 나제 견 담지 장네 가나다데 딱바람 좀 마시 차도가 약 쉬우 종수 손을 가고
Then from within the center of the Lotus Mandala seat, from the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha within, light rays begin to emanate, really powerful, pervasive, going through the petals of the lotus, and indeed through every atom of our bodies, from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet, purifying all negativities and obscurations that we have accumulated since beginning this time, including all the 10 non-virtues: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle gossip, of a malicious intent and covetousness and wrong view, all the negativities that we have accumulated, naturally occurring negativities, all that which has been proscribed by the Buddha, negativities from this life, the one previous to this and previous to that, and all that we have accumulated since the beginning of this time is all completely and utterly purified. All infractions of the Patimoksha vows and the Bodhisattva vows and the Tantric vows, all disrespect that we've shown to our parents right up to our gurus and so on. All of these kind of negativities of abandoning the Dharma at any point. Also that all negativities that we have engaged in ourselves, that we have induced others to do, or rejoiced in the doing of, all that kind of imprints on our minds, are completely and utterly purified, or a physical illness, disease, and so on is completely eradicated. Our mental problems, mental disease is completely eradicated. That all imbalances of the elements within our bodies, the imbalances of channels, rhythms, and rocks, all completely and utterly purified and rebalanced. And indeed, the main obstacle to our quickly attaining enlightenment, being our adherence to ordinary appearance, that's transformed into being able to see everything in its pure appearance.
Lama Shaja and good Henji Jigan Channel, social leader Lama Shaja and Kula Jusu, Samsacha, social Shindo Sim de Nilencha, Lama Shaja and Tude, and social sim de Lama Shaja and Tula Jusu, Samjacha. Rangel Lunga use on Lama Shaja and Kuzum to Moyeme Jusu, Samsacha. Di Tongba Di give a lotting in Dewa ten, Jatonis Ishi Kesu, Samsacha, and then Mutumba is even the Mari, Inea, but Kesu Samsacha. What in a and Ran Lama Shaja sing Kusu to the more image you some such and what in the chen and Nedia Lama Shaja sing the Tavish to choose some such. Ran Lama Shaja sing Kusu to more image you a day, Nala Rashima watching. What in the compassion come to Shene, they Tugale, the Bashamaja to a part of a vessel train. And comes from your similar town, Jella, Chasan, the shoes, some such. They show at dinner, the Datanja Lama Shaja sing Kusu to the more image you so such. 대다가 내대다 좋아를 주고 내대다 전자 라마시야스가 답을 시도 주소 다 감성 코아드 베타 매워자 동성도 전다 가자 심지어스게 명장 매워잖아 다 대다다 산제 고마텀네 보다대 중소서 내대가 라마시야스가 답을 시도 주소서 다 어디를 전다 심지어 탐제 산제 고마 주기 스다 니마 드린 주네 심지어다 산제 살아 고토소서 가고 보다 아니 심지어다 산제 살아 고바 대추도 소소 개화카를 두바 대주근 소소 제가 한가 아니 지가서 되게 유대는 두바 두사요 말이 선 동바디 대화대 동바니 대돈 있으면 이 시켜서 서로 어디로 공부하셔
Then through the combination of my own more subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of the Buddha. And then through the combination of my own more subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, and my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of the Buddha. So now my body, speech, and mind are inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. This is something that I rejoice in. This is really wonderful that this produces a sense of feeling of emptiness that combines with bliss, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and avoidance. And of course, I'm operating at a level of imagination and aspiration here, but I want to dedicate this so that it lays down powerful imprints on the mind to be actualized into the future. And then from that position of seeing myself as a fully enlightened being, lacking any objective existence, I send out light rays equal in number to all of the sentient beings in all the three realms of existence. And upon touching them, they are transformed into fully enlightened beings. And just like in my case, the place I am in transformed into the celestial abode of an enlightened being, so too the places in which all these sentient beings in the three realms exist. They are cleared of all faults, and they arise as the celestial abode of enlightened beings. And so it's at this point that I realized that I have really that taken account of today of leading all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment, that aspect, and as well as the aspect of the virtue that has enabled this to happen, myself as the agent of that virtue, completely and utterly lack any objective existence. They're merely imputed by thought. And this notion of this emptiness as well combines with the bliss and abiding wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. Of course, I know that I'm operating at this imaginative level here, that it isn't so easy as that, but I make a sincere dedication that whatever virtue that I've accumulated here, that we all have accumulated here, that we dedicate it so that it actually quickly leads to that state of enlightenment for sure, and that all of the conducive conditions will be there for us, and all of the inconducive conditions will be eradicated to our progress. You are Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence. Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows. Losangrakpa, at your feet and make requests.
No, so no, Toche. Everyone, thank you.
Thank you, Kanda.
Thank you, Ken.